Welcome back to Steady Hall, and specifically to Bills on the Hill.
Great to be here.
Today, we're taking a closer look at a pretty significant piece of proposed legislation. It's S.58, the Preventing Elected Leaders from Owning Securities and Investments Act.
Right. Better known maybe as the PELOSI Act.
Now,
It's definitely stirring up conversation about financial ethics.
it really is. And we've gathered, various sources, legal analyses, bits of the bill text itself to really unpack it for you.
Yeah, our goal is to give you a clear picture of what this act is actually proposing. What are its core ideas? How might it change things?
And importantly, how would it work in practice? Compliance, enforcement, all that.
Exactly. And the first big thing to grasp, I think, is how different this is from what we've had before, like the Stock Act, for example.
Right, the Stock Act was all about disclosure, wasn't it? Reporting trades.
Precisely. It was about transparency, making sure the public could see what lawmakers were treating. The idea, was that sunlight is the best disinfectant. But the PELOSI Act, it moves way beyond that. It's not just saying, tell us what you bought. It's saying you actually can't buy or sell or even hold certain things. It's a shift to prohibition.
A fundamental shift from just reporting to an outright ban on certain activities. Why? Why make that leap?
Well, the thinking seems to be driven by this concern that disclosure, while useful, might not be enough.
Not enough to stop conflicts of interest or even just the appearance of them.
Exactly. The argument is, if you own stock in Company X, could that knowledge, even subconsciously, affect how you vote on legislation impacting Company X?
Yeah.
So by banning those kinds of holdings, the Act aims to sort of build a clearer wall between personal finances and public duties.
And maybe boost public confidence that decisions aren't being swayed by personal investments.
That seems to be a major goal, yes, addressing that perception issue.
Okay, so it's a prohibition. Who exactly gets covered by this ban? Just the members of Congress themselves?
No, and this is really crucial. It covers members of Congress and their spouses.
Spouses too, why bring them into it?
Well, it's pretty clearly aimed at preventing loopholes. I mean, imagine if a member couldn't trade a certain stock, but their spouse could just do it instead.
Right, that wouldn't really solve the underlying issue, would it? The potential conflict is still there within the household finances.
Precisely. So including spouses is a recognition that financial lives are often intertwined and aims to make the prohibition more watertight.
Okay, that makes sense. So let's get into the weeds a bit. What specific things are we talking about? What falls under this definition of a covered financial instrument?
It's quite broad, actually. The core is investments in securities. So your typical stocks, bonds, options.
The standard stuff.
Right. But it also includes security futures and commodities.
It's commodities like oil or corn.
Exactly. Raw materials, agricultural products, energy, things whose prices can definitely be affected by government policy.
Okay.
And then there's a catch-all for comparable economic interests acquired through synthetic means.
Okay, what does that mean in plain English? Derivatives.
Basically, yes. Things like certain types of options or warrants. Ways you can get exposure to an asset's price without directly owning the asset itself. The idea is to capture things that function like direct ownership.
So they're trying to cover all the bases, making sure you can't just sidestep the rule by using a different kind of financial product that achieves the same result.
That seems to be the intent, to prevent direct financial stakes in specific companies, industries, or raw materials that Congress might regulate or influence.
But surely people need some way to invest their money, right? Are there any exceptions? What's still allowed?
Yes, absolutely. There are specific exclusions. The big ones are diversified mutual funds and diversified exchange-traded funds, ETFs.
Okay. So funds that hold lots of different stocks, not just one or two.
Exactly. The thinking there is that because they're diversified, your personal fortune isn't tied too closely to any single company. The potential for conflict is much lower.
Makes sense. What else is excluded?
United States Treasury bills, notes, and bonds are also okay.
Government debt. Generally seen as safe, transparent.
Right. Low risk, widely held, and less likely to be directly manipulated by specific pieces of legislation compared to, say, a tech stock.
And anything else?
Yes, one more key thing. Compensation from a spouse's or dependent's main job. So their salary, basically.
So it distinguishes between investment activity and just, earning a living from a regular job.
Correct. It's focused on the investment side of things, not earned income.
Okay. So if this act passes, you're a member of Congress or their spouse. You might hold some of these now prohibited things. How do you comply? What are the steps?
There are a few main routes. The simplest is just don't own the prohibited stuff. Stick to those excluded categories we just talked about, diversified funds, treasuries.
Okay, pretty straightforward for some, maybe.
Yeah.
But what if you already own individual stocks?
Right. For that, the bill provides a divestment window. It's 180 days.
6 months.
6 months. If you're already serving when the act takes effect, the clock starts then. If you're newly elected, it starts when you take office.
So a grace period to sell off those covered assets.
Exactly. Time to adjust your portfolio to meet the new rules.
Are there other options besides just selling everything?
Yes, a very important one is setting up a qualified blind trust.
A blind trust. We hear that term sometimes. How does it work here?
Essentially, you put your assets into a trust, and you, the member or spouse, give up all control and knowledge of what's specifically held in that trust.
So you don't know what stocks or bonds are being bought or sold on your behalf?
Correct. An independent trustee makes all the decisions, and they're not supposed to communicate with you about the specific holdings. It severs that direct link.
So you could technically still hold otherwise prohibited assets within the trust, but you wouldn't know it, theoretically mitigating the conflict.
That's the principle, yes. It allows holding assets while removing your direct knowledge and control.
Interesting. What if, say, selling everything in 180 days is genuinely difficult for some reason? Are there any allowances?
There is flexibility. The ethics committees, we'll talk more about them, can grant extensions to that 180-day window.
On what grounds?
If they decide the member is making a good faith effort to divest but is facing, real practical challenges, it's not automatic, but it's possible.
Okay. And one more thing. What if someone messes up? Is it an immediate penalty?
Not necessarily. The Act provides an opportunity to fix things. Even if an ethics committee flags a potential violation, they generally have to give the member a chance to come into compliance before penalties kick in.
So there's a chance to correct course. That seems reasonable. You mentioned the ethics committees. Who are they and what's their role in all this?
Right. These are the existing House and Senate ethics committees. The PELOSI Act designates them as the supervising ethics committees.
And they get new powers under this bill.
Significant ones, yes. They're basically in charge of the whole system, implementing the rules, enforcing them, issuing guidance to clarify things.
Okay.
They're the ones who approve those divestment extensions we mentioned. They also receive annual compliance certifications from every member.
Certification saying, yes, I'm following the rules.
Yeah. Exactly. And those certifications have to be made public. They also have the power to investigate violations and, crucially, assess civil fines.
Fines. Okay, how does that work? Can they just slap a fine on someone?
No, there's a process. They have to give the member written notice about the alleged violation first.
Due process.
Yes. Then the member has the right to a hearing to present their side of the story. And as we said, there's usually that chance to fix the problem first.
And is the outcome public if a fine is assessed?
Yes. The details about fines, the reasons, the outcome are supposed to be published. Transparency there.
What if the member disagrees with the fine? Is that the end of it?
No, there's an appeal mechanism. They can appeal the committee's decision to a vote on the floor of a full House or Senate.
A vote by all their colleagues. Interesting. So what are the actual penalties if someone is found non-compliant and doesn't fix it?
There are a few layers. First, any profit made from a prohibited transaction or holding has to be paid back to the Treasury. That's called disgorgement.
Okay, give back the gains. What else?
Second, if you lost money on a prohibited transaction, you can't deduct that loss on your income taxes.
So no tax benefit from breaking the rules.
Right. And then third, there are those civil fines that the ethics committees can assess.
And just to be clear, these penalties could apply even if it was the member's spouse who made the prohibited trade.
That's correct. The member can face consequences, including fines, based on their spouse's non-compliance.
Wow. That really hammers home how central the spouse inclusion is. It's not just a minor detail. It has real teeth.
It absolutely does. It shows the Act is serious about preventing that potential workaround. The compliance paths, exclusions, divestment, blind trusts are available to spouses too, but so are the potential penalties for the member if things go wrong.
Okay. Now, looking a bit down the road, is there any mechanism to see if this act, if passed, is actually working as intended?
Yes, there is. The bill requires the Comptroller General, the head of the GAO, the Government Accountability Office, to conduct an audit.
An audit of what?
An audit of compliance with the Act. It has to happen within 2 years of the law taking effect.
So an independent checkup.
Exactly. The GAO will look at how well the law is being followed, what its effects are, and then report those findings back to the House and Senate ethics committees.
Provide some objective feedback on whether it's achieving its goals.
Right. A built-in review process.
Well, this has been really helpful in breaking down the PELOSI Act. Just to recap for everyone listening, we've talked about this major proposed shift from just disclosing financial trades to actually prohibiting certain ones for members of Congress and their spouses.
We covered who's affected, what specific investments, like stocks and commodities, would be banned, but also what's excluded, like diversified funds and treasuries.
We look at the ways to comply selling assets within 180 days, using a blind trust, or sticking to excluded investments.
And the key role of the ethics committees in oversight, enforcement, granting extensions, and assessing penalties like disgorgement, loss of tax deductions, and fines.
Plus that important audit down the line by the GAO.
It's definitely a proposal with the potential to significantly alter the financial landscape for those serving in Congress.
It really is, and it leaves you, the listener, with some things to think about, doesn't it? What might the real-world impact of a law like this be? How could it change the kinds of financial decisions lawmakers and their families make?
Yeah, and could it affect who even decides to run for office in the first place? There's always that balance to consider between strong ethical guardrails and the practicalities of public service and personal life.
It's a complex balance. Perhaps something to explore further is the history here. How did ethics rules evolve to this point? Or how do other countries handle this? Lots to think about.
Definitely. An ongoing debate, for sure.